So once a bacterial infection gets into the body, then it's going to cause either direct or indirect damage. Direct damage occurs when toxins are causing the damage. So those toxins are produced by the pathogen. Indirect damage occurs when the chemicals and the materials the bacteria are producing stimulate an immune response. And so our immune system actually causes the majority of the damage. A lot of times the damage is how the pathogen spreads. So an example, Vibrio cholera induces very serious diarrhea, and the diarrhea is where the Vibrio are getting out of the body. Bordetella pertussis triggers severe coughing, and so the bacteria are released into the air. So let's look at some of those different toxins first. Exotoxins are proteins that are produced mainly from gram-positive bacteria, but can be produced from some gram-negative bacteria. These are going to get into the cells following sometimes the release of chemicals from bacterial lysis, and sometimes from the bacteria just releasing the chemical naturally. Foodborne intoxication is the result of eating food that has the pathogen in it. Most foods that are heated to a certain temperature are going to destroy the toxin, because exotoxins are proteins. They are typically heat sensitive. Exotoxins can act locally, or they can be found systemically. We can produce immune system response and antibodies, but because these toxins are very, very dangerous and very fatal, our immune system doesn't always have a chance to generate the response that is needed. Therefore, we have vaccines that are going to protect us from these potential damaging toxins. The vaccines are often known as toxoids, which can inactivate the toxin. An antitoxin is a suspension of antibodies that can be released into the body that will bind to the toxin and neutralize the toxin. So exotoxins can be neurotoxins, enterotoxins, or cytotoxins. So they differ by which types of cells they're going to attack. So one type of exotoxin is an AB exotoxin. AB exotoxins bind, the B portion binds to the cell, and so the B subunit is what is going to determine if it's going to be a neurotoxin, if it's going to be an enterotoxin, or if it's going to be a cytotoxin. Then the A is the toxic portion. That's the protein that is then going to cause damage. But because of these AB toxins, we can actually utilize the B subunit to deliver a compound that can then protect. So a vaccine that protects us from the toxin. So cytotoxins are toxins that damage the plasma membrane of cells. So we have hemolysins that damage blood, red blood cells. We have pore-forming toxins, which cause pores to form in the plasma membrane of our cells, which cause materials to be able to leak out or materials to move in and kill the cell. Phospholipases hydrolyze the phospholipids. Our plasma membrane is composed of predominantly phospholipids. So if all those phospholipids are broken down, then our cell is destroyed. Then we have superantigens. Superantigens stimulate high numbers of helper T cells. Helper T cells are the main runner of all of our defense mechanisms. So helper T cells stimulate nonspecific defenses as well as both our cell-mediated and antibody-mediated defense mechanisms. So humoral defense. This can actually lead to a cytokine storm. Cytokines are chemicals released by those helper T cells to stimulate, to initiate complement, to initiate fever, to cause both B cells and cytotoxic T cells to start working faster and start replicating. So this cytokine storm can actually raise our body temperature and cause severe swelling and lead to death of an individual. So how does this happen, you might ask? Well, normally helper T cells will only bind to type 2 MHC molecules that it recognizes. And when it binds to that type 2 MHC complex, then it releases chemicals that, so cytokines, to stimulate a response. If it doesn't recognize it, it's going to not release any potential chemicals. But what superantigens do is, even though the helper T cell binds to an MHC class 2 complex that it doesn't recognize, the superantigen makes it think it does recognize the potential pathogen, and then it secretes lots and lots of cytokines. There are other types of toxic proteins as well. So we have exfoliation proteins. Exfoliation proteins cause the skin to be unable to bind together. So basically acts as an exfoliator, but you're losing a lot of skin. This is what this is what happens in scalded skin syndrome. And then we have some hydrolytic enzymes that break down lipases and collagen. We have hydrolytic enzymes that break down lipids and collagen, and even proteins within connective tissue. Connective tissue is the most common tissue of our body, and so this is going to allow bacteria to spread very quickly, and it's going to cause a lot of damage to our body itself. So here you can see different types of neurotoxins. I didn't talk about different types of toxins, AB toxins, which can be enterotoxins or neurotoxins. I didn't specifically talk about what a neurotoxin does. Neurotoxins damage nervous cells. So in the presence of Clostridium botulinum, the neurotoxin causes cells to be unable to contract, muscles to be unable to contract, and so it causes a flaccid paralysis. And in presence of Clostridium tetani, you have the exact opposite happening. So the tetanus toxin actually causes the muscles to be unable to relax. So that's a form of spastic paralysis. Enterotoxins cause severe damage to your enteric system, so the gut. Many of them cause very serious diarrhea. And then we have cytotoxins, which cause damage to cells themselves. And so depending on where the cells are will determine what body regions are damaged. Bacillus anthracis can cause damage to our skin. Bordetella pertussis can cause damage to our lung tissue. And so Corynebacteria diphtheria can cause damage to our throat, our heart. So a lot of different types of damage can occur from these different AB toxins. We have membrane damaging cytotoxins. So these are going to damage, and I talked a little about these. These are going to cause severe damage to our cells. This can lead to death of the body tissue in that area. Superantigens cause the cytokine storm, which can, depending on where that cytokine storm is going to be located, it's going to cause all kinds of problems. And then we have those other toxins. So endotoxins then are a portion of the bacterial lipopolysaccharide. So remember, bacteria that are gram-negative have two plasma membranes, and the outer membrane has that lipopolysaccharide. Within that lipopolysaccharide, we have lipid A, and then we have that O polysaccharide. So the lipid A is actually an endotoxin. So only gram-negative bacteria can release endotoxins. When the endotoxin is released, because it's a lipid, it's heat stable. So you can't destroy it. We can't produce, a fever isn't going to inactivate it. This lipid A stimulates both innate and specific defense mechanisms. So our non-specific defenses like fever and swelling are going to occur, but also we're going to produce lots of cytokines from our adaptive immune system. We're going to produce antibodies. We're going to produce high levels of B and T cells that are going to try and kill off these pathogens. When we talk about gram-negative endotoxins, we always have the same response. So exotoxins are going to have different responses depending on the type of exotoxin. Endotoxins always have the same response. You're always going to have this very, very intense fever that is going to lead to potentially endotoxic shock. So this table just shows a comparison between exo and endotoxins. Here you can see gram-positive bacteria and gram-negative bacteria can produce exotoxins, mainly gram-positive, though very few gram-negatives do, whereas only gram-negatives can produce endotoxins. Where is the toxin located? What is the chemical nature of the toxin? Can you produce toxoids? Is it inactivated by heat? What mechanism of damage occurs? So this is that endotoxic shock. This is going to be dependent on the toxoid or the toxic chemical released. And then here you need small amounts in localized area, but you can get a lot more to cause a systemic deadly response, whereas a small amount is very potent in this one and can lead to be deadly over here. This is the end of this chapter, so I'm going to stop here. I will post these and I'll get into chapter 19 next. Bye.